What are the 5 biggest mistakes that most people do if they prepare for case interviews in consulting? Hi everyone, my name is Johannes. I'm an expert and career coach for careers in consulting, finance and management. And so far we have helped more than 100 clients to take the next step in their career in consulting, finance and management. And in this video, I want to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes that most people do if they prepare for interviews in consulting. So we have worked with so many people and we are talking on a daily basis with people who want to successfully land a job offer in consulting. And when I talk to them and when I ask them about, hey, how do you prepare for case interviews? Then I always hear the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's why I want to make this video to help you to understand what the most common mistakes are and also to help you to avoid these mistakes. So let's jump right into it. So if you want to understand how to prepare for case interviews, then you need to understand the following first. So the preparation of case interviews or for case interviews can be explained by the Pareto principle. So if you imagine like a pyramid, and on the one side we have like the effort and we have the result, okay, or performance level. Oops. So then there is a typical application of the Pareto principle, which means with only 20% of the effort, you already get to a solid 80% performance level. All right. So what does that mean? This means if you start reading books, if you start watching some YouTube videos, if you start, I don't know, checking some content from Prep Launch, for example, right? So you will make a pretty fast progress, right? You will get pretty quickly to an 80% performance level because like you understand, hey, you know, how do you solve that? What are the structures? You know, what do interviewers typically ask? So this is pretty easy to do and you will feel a very quick process and feel very motivated. But the tricky thing is that to get an interview and to get an offer from a top consulting firm, it's not enough to be on an 80% performance level. You want to be in this top 1 to 5%, all right? This is where you want to go. The problem is that these additional 20% of performance level, they cost so much time and roughly 80% of the effort is required to get to this top performance level, right? So for the last, let's say 15 to 20%. And why is that? The reason is that case interviews in consulting are very unpredictable because like you can get different cases, you can, you know, have different kind of interviewers, and it also depends like on your daily performance. So it's really hard to predict and you need to prepare for a lot of stuff. And also, especially if you want to apply for strategy consulting, so for McKinsey, BCG, Bain, but also tier 2 firms like Oliver Wyman, Strategy and so on. If you want to apply for these firms or get the offer from these firms, then you really need to be in the top percent. The selective process is so tough, and especially at the moment where the entire consulting industry is still in a hiring slowdown or hiring freeze, where we see still some layoffs, it's so important to understand that you really need to be or to get into this 1 to 5% or top percent of the performance in an interview. All right. So, and with that being said, let's talk about like the 5 biggest mistakes that I see all the time that people do and that holds them back to get to this performance level, right? Let's talk about that. So mistake number 1 is that they don't do enough cases. So don't do enough cases. So this means that, you know, they may buy a book or they go to Prep Launch and then they just like work through 5 to 10 cases on their own, okay? And this is simply not enough. You see, there are different case types out there like profit and loss, like market estimations, like market entry, like M&A, process optimization, and so on. There's so many different case types that you need a certain amount of number of cases to just see all of these different case types and to get familiar with them. Also, besides that, you want to practice how to structure cases, how to communicate in cases, how to analyze cases. So if you don't give yourself the time to actually learn and to practice these topics, you will have a very hard time. So that's why mistake number one is that people don't do enough cases. Mistake number two is that they don't have a structured approach. So no structured approach. And this means that, they don't follow a clear system to learn the skills. So they watch a YouTube video, then they also buy a book, then they maybe book an online course, then they ask their friends who already interviewed for BCG or so. So they don't have a system. They rather, pick different concepts from different people and try to put it all together. Also, they don't understand that in terms of like the difficulty of cases, there are certain levels, right? And there are certain things that you should learn in a certain order. So for example, first you should learn how to structure a case and how to make a good opening and closing of the case. Then you need to learn how to structure different case types, okay? How to, work with market entry cases, M&A cases, and so on. And at the end, the third level is that you really, focus on a good communication, interaction with the interviewer. And most people don't have a structured approach. And that's also why they get confused with different concepts, why they also, often lack a strong foundation. And, this also is a big reason why people fail in the interviews. Then mistake number three is that they don't have a consistent tracking. So they have no tracking of their performance, right? And this is of course also a huge problem. So if you do cases, let's say you practice case on your own or you practice with your friends, then very often you get like qualitative feedback. Okay, they maybe say, hey, listen, in this part the structure was not good, or here the communication could have been a bit better. And maybe you even take notes, and if you're really good, then you collect all the notes in one file and try, if you improve certain points. But the big problem is that you probably interview with various different people and they all apply different criteria, right? One person is totally fixed on the structure, the other person really focused on the strong analysis. All right, so you will get different types of feedbacks and different depth of feedback from different people, okay? And if you don't have a quantitative tracking or like a tracking in a fixed set of criteria that you track over time, ideally where you even get a numeric evaluation so that you really can track the process. If you don't do that, then you cannot really track the performance of your cases, okay? So that's really important, and that's also what I see, that most people do not have a tracking. So, fourth mistake, and this is probably the biggest one, is that they don't work with experts, okay? So don't work with experts. And the problem is that most people practice cases on their own, okay? So they buy a book or they get some cases and then they just solve it on their own. But this is of course completely wrong, because the difficult thing about case studies is not to structure cases, it's to solve them in a social pressure situation, okay? So practicing cases on your own is really not the way to do it. Some people, they meet with friends, they are in a consulting club, they ask people from the university, or go to Prep Lounge and schedule some meetings, and then they practice with peers. But the big mistake here is that none of you have ever been on the interviewer side, right? So you don't know what the firms expect because you don't have the benchmark. You only have your own references and maybe the references from other people with whom you practice. But you don't know what a perfect case looks like because you've never done it or have never seen it, and that's a huge problem. And even if you practice with someone who successfully interviewed for one of the big firms, here often the problem is that they cannot conceptualize their feedback, all right? Maybe they have a good performance because they're naturally good in these kind of tests and in case studies, but they cannot teach you how to do that because they never thought about how to teach people in a structured way the case approach, and that's a huge problem. Okay, so definitely make sure that you work with experts who have worked with like several hundreds of people already who know what to do, who have seen like different interview types, who know what the firms expect. That's so important. Otherwise, you will have a very, very hard time to get to the top 1 or 5%. And then mistake number 5 is that they don't use available insights. Okay, don't use insights. So what do I mean by that? So there are many experiences out there from different firms. Okay, so every firm has a different interview process, but of course there are some references, because like firms don't reinvent the interview process on a weekly basis. So this means there are insights out there, you know, what firms are asked. There are references out there, you know, what is important if you interview for certain firms. And of course, you know, there are cases out there where people know, where we know, you know, that firms have done these cases before. And most people don't utilize this available information, okay? So maybe, you know, they ask a friend and maybe they have someone who interviewed there, but they don't have the big picture. They don't know what each firm, you know, is really requiring and expecting. And that's a big mistake, because this information is available. So to summarize, to get to the top, you really need to put in a lot of effort. You need to be in the top 1 to 5%. That's really important. And the 5 biggest mistakes that keep people away from achieving that is that they don't solve enough cases. They don't have a structured approach in learning cases. They don't track their performance. They don't work with experts, and they don't use insights that are available. So if you wanna prepare for case interviews the right way, then please apply for a free consultation. Go to careerbootcamp.org. So it's careerbootcamp.org. You can apply for a free consultation with us. Then we schedule a call and see if and how we can help you. And with that being said, have a successful day. Talk to you soon. Goodbye, Johannes.